Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ, and welcome to Vatican Radio's live-streamed broadcast of Pope Leo XIV's Jubilee audience for pilgrims taking part in the Jubilee of Justice. The Jubilee of Justice is intended for all those involved in the world of the law, including secular, canonical, and ecclesiastical justice. Would mean judges, public prosecutors, magistrates, lawyers, legal practitioners, paralegals, etc. And of course, also including their families. My name is Christopher Wells. I'll be providing the English language translation of the Holy Father's reflection this morning. And as we begin our broadcast, I would like to welcome everyone joining us through the various Vatican media channels, the Vatican audio or radio app, the Vatican News web portal, and the Vatican News YouTube channel, as well as those listening in by means of our partners, including EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network in America, Salt and Light TV, Shalom World TV, Atmadarshan TV, Catholic TV, and Luminous Radio India. Very warm welcome to all of you from the Vatican. And we're coming to you live from St. Peter's Square, where we are expecting the imminent arrival of Pope Leo. For those of you following along with the video feed, you'll see a fair number of people already gathered in the square for the audience. Not just those taking part in the Jubilee, but also other pilgrims and visitors to Rome who have the opportunity to hear our Holy Father speaking and see him in person. It is a beautiful late summer's day here in Rome. And we'll hear in a moment the Holy Father. We're expecting him to reflect on the concept of justice for this Jubilee audience. In fact, throughout this Jubilee year, we've seen a number of special audiences for various classes of people. This will be the first audience in the history of Jubilees dedicated to legal professionals. As we mentioned, this includes all those involved in the world of secular, canonical, and ecclesiastical justice. In the Vatican City State, the Roman Curia, as well as in civil courts, including people such as judges, lawyers and magistrates, paralegals, administrative staff, all those involved in the administration of justice in the church and in the state, as well as their families who have joined them for this Jubilee pilgrimage. The Jubilee of Justice has about 15,000 registered participants from approximately 100 different countries, with large delegations from Italy, Spain, Portugal, Poland, France, the United States, Canada, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Australia, Nigeria, Peru, the Philippines. So a very, very diverse group of legal professionals from around the world, from all the different continents. The Jubilee also sees a variety of legal institutions, professional associations, and universities, especially the law faculties of the various pontifical and Catholic universities. Among those represented, we have the Ministry of Justice of the Republic of Italy, Italy's Constitutional Court, the Superior Council of the Judiciary, the Supreme Court of Cassation, also the Confederation of Catholic Jurists of France. The Supreme Court of the United States is represented, as well as the Supreme Courts of Brazil and Colombia, Spain, the Supreme Court of the Vatican Judiciary, the Court of Auditors, the Presidency of the Italian Council of State, a number of Catholic organizations, the International Union of Catholic Jurists, the Union of Italian Catholic Jurists, and the National Magistrates Association. Already this morning, the Jubilee participants and pilgrims were able to take part in a meeting with Archbishop Rino Fisichella, the pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, who welcomed pilgrims to the Jubilee. There was also a keynote lecture from Bishop Juan Ignacio Arrieta, the Secretary of the Dicastery for Legislative Texts. He spoke on the theme of Justitia Imago Dei, Justice, the Image of God, and the workers of justice as instruments of hope. Originally, those events were planned to take place in the Paul VI Hall, but were moved to St. Peter's Square. The various events of some of the events of this Jubilee of Justice had to be moved to the square precisely because of the high number of people who wanted to take part in the Jubilee for Justice. Again, the high point of the Jubilee will be this audience with the Holy Father. Originally scheduled for 12 noon, it has been pushed back a little bit due to the Holy Father's schedule. After the audience with the Pope, the participants will have the opportunity to complete their pilgrimage by passing through the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica. The Church has made a huge effort throughout this Jubilee year to organize the various events so that everything will be able to progress smoothly. For those coming to Rome and St. Peter's, the main road leading up to the Basilica, the Via della Conciliazione, is the path that the pilgrims take, and you'll see throughout the day large pilgrim groups led by the Jubilee Cross making their way to the Basilica for the pilgrims to pass through the Holy Doors at St. Peter's. Today's Jubilee also has a number of other events connected to it, including a dialogue this evening with Samuel Alito, Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. That's been organized by the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See. Because of the nature of that event, that is invitation only, but I would expect to see a number of pilgrims for the Jubilee of Justice taking part in that. There is also a formal disputatio, dialogue that has been organized by the French Embassy to the Holy See and the Pious Establishments of France in Rome and Loreto. That's going to be chaired by Professor Patrick Valdrini. That's also taking place later this evening. So a full slate of events for the Jubilee of Justice. as we continue to wait for the arrival of the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV. The Jubilee of Justice is one of a number of major events taking place in relation to the Jubilee as part of the Jubilee at this time of the year. We've had various pilgrim groups coming throughout the summer, although perhaps a little somewhat fewer during the hot summer months in Rome. But recently we saw, of course, the commemoration of the new martyrs and witnesses of the faith that took place last Sunday. A commemoration that also saw the participation of a number of ecumenical groups, including delegations of various non-Catholic churches and ecclesial communions. And on Monday we had the Jubilee of Consolation. And of course, as we mentioned, the various pilgrim groups that have passed through the holy doors, and that's a constant stream of pilgrims throughout this whole year. I think many people in Rome have noted how many pilgrims have come to the city to take part in this special quarter-century celebration. The Holy Father, Pope Leo, has now arrived in St. Peter's Square, making his rounds amongst the people in the Pope Mobile. And in just a few moments, we'll have the beginning of the audience and the reflections by Pope Leo. For those of you just joining us, the Holy Father has arrived in St. Peter's Square for the Jubilee of Justice, for pilgrims representing the legal world, both canonical and civil law, judges, lawyers, legal professionals, administrators, and their families. And the Holy Father taking a moment to greet the faithful here gathered in the square. About 15,000 people have registered for the Jubilee of Justice, many of them here in St. Peter's Square, but also lots of pilgrims and visitors taking advantage of the beautiful late summer weather here in Rome. It's certainly a beautiful sunshiny day here. And as the Holy Father greets the faithful in St. Peter's Square, I would like to Welcome everybody once again, joining us through the various Vatican media channels, the Vatican audio or radio app, the Vatican News web portal, and our Vatican News YouTube channel, as well as all those listening or watching by means of our partner organizations, including EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network in America, Salt and Light TV, Shalom World TV, Atmadarshan TV, Catholic TV, and Luminous Radio India. The Holy Father, as has become customary in recent decades, taking a lot of time to visit with the crowds as much as possible, taking the opportunity to wave and greet those who've come to St. Peter's Square, and blessing children, and certainly an enthusiastic crowd here this Saturday morning to greet the Holy Father and hear his reflections on justice for the Jubilee of Justice. Once again, my name is Christopher Wells. I will be providing the English translation of the Holy Father's remarks this morning. It'll probably be about 5 more minutes as the Holy Father makes his way through St. Peter's Square. As we mentioned, the Jubilee audience for this Jubilee of Justice is part of a series of special Jubilee events taking part throughout the year. In the coming days and weeks, we're going to have a Jubilee of Catechists. That's next weekend, September 26th through the 28th. The following week, we'll have the Jubilee of the Missions, as well as the Jubilee of Migrants. Later in October, the Jubilee of Consecrated Life, the Jubilee of Marian Spirituality, the Jubilee of the Roma peoples, as well as the Sinti and other traveling peoples. Pilgrimages of various dioceses and archdioceses from around the world. Obviously, quite a few from Italy. It's very easy to get to Rome from anywhere in the country, but also from further afield, including Germany, the United States, Asia, South America, Africa. A lot of pilgrim groups from dioceses, parishes, from different countries, different states and cities. The Jubilee year every 25 years brings millions of people to the Eternal City, which always does its best to welcome a huge influx of people, to keep them comfortable and help set the stage for the spiritual experience of the Jubilee year and their visits to Rome and their passage through the holy doors of the papal basilicas. Further on this year, we'll have a Jubilee of synodal teams and participatory bodies, Jubilee of the world of education, the Jubilee of the poor, the Jubilee of choirs, Jubilee of prisoners, taking us through December. Again, one of the aspects of this year's Jubilee has been a very definite effort on the part of the Church to host events for different groups of people, to make that Jubilee pilgrimage relevant to different groups, and gives kind of a personalized character to visits to Rome for the Jubilee year. And the Holy Father is now driving up in the Pope Mobile to the platform in front of St. Peter's Basilica, where he'll give his address. A reminder, our broadcast goes out not only to those who are able to watch the video feed, but also those listening in on radio. So a little word of description for what's happening for those who aren't able to see on their screens what's going on here in Rome. Now the Holy Father is approaching the throne where he will be seated to deliver his remarks on the Jubilee of Justice. And now our Holy Father.
E del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo. Amen. La pace sia con voi.
And as with all of his audiences, he begins with the sign of the cross and the liturgical greeting.
Provenienti da circa 100 paesi differenti, dall'Italia, Spagna, Portogallo agli Stati Uniti e Canada, dalla Colombia, il Brasile, il Messico, il Perù, alle Filippine, Australia, Nigeria.
And greeted by Rino Fisichella.
Magistrati di tutte le giurisdizioni e ambiti.
And
avvocati,
explaining where the pilgrims are from and their occupations.
Li accompagnano il personale amministrativo dei tribunali e delle università, unitamente ai familiari che non hanno voluto mancare a questo appuntamento. Sono intervenuti numerosi anche dalle varie associazioni nazionali e internazionali, quali le unioni giuristi cattolici e i centri di cultura giuridica e sociale. In una parola, quanti hanno a cuore l'amore per la giustizia e ne sono al servizio quotidiano, sono qui desiderosi di ascoltare la sua parola. Sono certi che verranno rafforzati nella responsabilità di coniugare l'interpretazione della legge con il diritto, in modo che la giustizia sia realmente la base del vivere personale e sociale. Grazie.
And the introduction there by Archbishop Rino Fisichella. Now the words of our Holy Father.
Muy buenos días a todos. Good morning and welcome. Cari fratelli e sorelle, sono lieto di accogliervi.
Dear brothers and sisters, I am pleased to welcome you on the occasion of the Jubilee dedicated to all those who in various ways work in the vast field of justice. I greet the distinguished authorities present, who have come from many countries, representing various courts, and all of you who, day by day, carry out a necessary service for the orderly relations among peoples, communities, and states. And the Jubilee makes us all pilgrims who, in rediscovering the signs of a hope that does not disappoint, wish to recover the necessary trust in the Church as in society, in interpersonal relations, in international relations, in the promotion of the dignity of every person, and in respect for creation. What better occasion than this to reflect more closely on justice and its function, which we know is indispensable both for the orderly development of society and as a cardinal virtue that inspires and guides the conscience of every man and woman. Justice, in fact, is called to play a higher role in human coexistence, one that cannot be reduced to the mere application of law or to the work of judges, nor be limited to procedural aspects.
Ami la giustizia e la malvagità detesti, dice il Salmo, e ci ricorda l'espressione biblica esortando ciascuno di noi.
Love justice and hate wickedness, the biblical expression reminds us, urging each of us to do good and avoid evil. And again, how much wisdom lies in the maxim to give to each one his due. Yet even this does not exhaust the profound longing for what is just, present in each of us, the thirst for justice, which is the key instrument for building the common good in every human society. In justice, in fact, are united the dignity of the person, his or her relationship with others, and the communal dimension of coexistence with its structures and shared rules. A circularity of social relations that places at its center the value of every human being, to be safeguarded through justice in the face of the various forms of conflict that may arise in individual action or in the loss of common sense that can affect institutions and structures alike. Tradition teaches us that justice is above all a virtue, that is, a firm and stable disposition that orders our conduct according to reason and faith. The virtues of justice in particular consists in the constant and firm will to give to God and to our neighbor what is their due. In this perspective, for the believer, justice disposes us to respect the rights of each person and to establish in human relations the harmony that promotes fairness towards individuals and the common good. an objective that guarantees an order protecting the weak, those who seek justice because there are victims of oppression, are excluded, or are ignored. The Gospel recounts many episodes in which human action is measured by a justice capable of defeating the evil of abuse, such as the persistence of the widow who compels the judge to rediscover a sense of what is just. It also speaks of a higher justice that pays the laborer of the last hour the same as the one who has worked the whole day, or the justice that makes mercy the key of interpretation in relationships, moving one to forgive by welcoming the son who is lost and has been found, or even more, to forgive not 7 times, but 70 times 7. It's the power of forgiveness, intrinsic to the commandment of love, that emerges as a constitutive element of a justice capable of uniting the supernatural with the human. Evangelical justice, therefore, does not turn away from human justice, or does not take away from human justice, but questions and reshapes it. It challenges to always go further because it impels it towards reconciliation. Evil, in fact, must not only be punished but also repaired, and for this a deep gaze toward the good of persons and to the common good is necessary. A demanding task, but not impossible for those who, knowing that they exercise a more exacting service, a more demanding service than others, commit themselves to an irreproachable way of life. As is known, justice becomes concrete when it reaches out towards others, when each is given what is due them, up to the point of achieving equality and dignity and opportunity among human beings. Yet we are aware that true equality is not merely formal equality before the law. While this equality is an indispensable condition for the proper exercise of justice, it does not erase the fact that there are growing discriminations whose first consequence is precisely the denial of access to justice. True equality, is the possibility given to all to fulfill their own aspirations and to see the rights inherent in their dignity guaranteed by a system of shared values capable of inspiring norms and laws on which the functioning of institutions is founded. Today, what calls upon those who work in the field of justice is precisely the search for or recovery of those values forgotten in coexistence, and their care and respect. This is a useful and necessary process faced with the rise of behaviors and strategies that show contempt for human life from its very beginning, that deny basic rights for personal existence, and that don't respect the conscience from which freedoms flow. Precisely through the values at the foundation of social life, justice assumes its central role in the coexistence of persons and human communities. As St. Augustine wrote, "Justice is not such if it is not at the same time prudent, strong, and temperate." This requires the ability always to think in the light of truth and wisdom, to interpret the law by probing its depths beyond the merely formal dimension, so as to grasp the intimate meaning of the truth which we serve. Striving towards justice, therefore, requires that we love justice as a reality attainable only through constant attentiveness. Radical disinterestedness and persistent discernment. For in exercising justice, one is placed at the service of persons, of the people, and of the state, in full and constant dedication. The greatness of justice does not diminish when exercised in small matters, but always emerges when faithfully applied to the law and to respect for the individual, wherever in the world they may be. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. With this beatitude, the Lord Jesus wanted to express the spiritual tension to which we must remain open, not only to obtain true justice, but above all to seek it, especially on the part of those called to implement it in different historical circumstances. To hunger and thirst for justice means being aware that it requires personal effort to interpret the law in the most humane way possible. But above all, it asks us to aspire to a satisfaction that can be fulfilled only in a greater justice, transcending particular situations. Dear friends, the Jubilee also invites us to reflect on an aspect of justice that is not always sufficiently emphasized, namely, the reality of so many countries and peoples who hunger and thirst for justice because their living conditions, the conditions of their lives, are so inequitable and so inhuman as to be unacceptable. To the present international situation should be applied these ever-valid pronouncements. Without justice, the state cannot be governed. It is impossible that there be right in a state where there is no true justice. The act accomplished according to law is certainly accomplished according to justice, such that it is impossible that an act performed against justice could be performed according to the law. The state in which there is no justice is not a state. Justice, in fact, is the virtue that gives to each one what is due them. Therefore, it is not true justice that deprives man himself of the true God. May the demanding words of St. Augustine inspire each of us to always express to the fullest the exercise of justice in the service of the people, with eyes fixed on God, so as to fully respect justice, right, and the dignity of persons. With these best wishes and hopes, I thank you and offer heartfelt blessing to each one of you, to your families, and to your work. The words of our Holy Father for the Jubilee of Justice. And the Holy Father now leads us in the Our Father.
venga il tuo regno, sia fatta la tua volontà, come in cielo così in terra. Dacci oggi il nostro pane quotidiano e rimetti a noi i nostri debiti, come anche noi li rimettiamo ai nostri debitori. E non abbandonarci alla tentazione, ma liberaci dal male. Il Signore sia con voi.
And the apostolic blessing.
Sia benedetto il nome del Signore. Il nostro ausilio è nel nome del Signore. Vi benedica Dio Onnipotente, Padre, Figlio e Spirito Santo. Amen.
And with the Holy Father's apostolic blessing, this special Jubilee audience will be drawing to a close. As usual, the Holy Father will greet those present, cardinals, bishops, as well as some of the dignitaries who are present. We've mentioned a fair number of leaders of the what we might call the world of justice, legal professionals, judges, solicitors, barristers, etc., who have come for this Jubilee. And with the Holy Father greeting those present, our broadcast is going to come to an end. On behalf of Vatican Radio, I would like to thank our partners who help make these live broadcasts available throughout the world, especially EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network in America, Salt and Light TV, Shalom World TV, Atmadarshan TV, Catholic TV, and Luminous Radio India. For full coverage of the Holy Father's reflection today on the idea of justice and how it functions in the world, we invite you to visit our website at www.vaticannews.va, as well as our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube accounts. We also have all of the latest news from the Vatican and around the world. Thanks to this afternoon go to our producers and technicians here in studio. And thanks as well to all of you for joining us today. My name is Christopher Wells. It's been a great pleasure providing the English language translation of the Holy Father's remarks at today's address and audience for the Jubilee of Justice. And we conclude, as always, praise be Jesus Christ. Laudetur Jesus Christus.